Panel 2 is discussion of the scope of laws related to human trafficking and prostitution and pimping. And I'm proud to say that I have Alameda County DA, my DA, Nancy O'Malley, that we have someone speaking for the erotic services providers, Maxine Doogan, and former Supervisor Deputy Attorney General Gerald Mosley, and then finally Stephen Mundkelp from the California Attorneys for Criminal Justice. All right, Ms. Doogan, could you proceed?
Thanks so much. My name is Maxine Doogan. I am an erotic service provider. An erotic service provider is anybody who earns a living from their erotic labor: prostitutes, exotic dancers, adult film performers, phone sex operators, and webcam performers. And I myself work as a prostitute of 25 years, and I pretty much plan on working for another 25 more. Our group is completely unfunded. In a statement published on Wednesday, August 12th in 2015 by journalist Mike Ludwig, he stated that the director of the Coalition Against Trafficking in Women, BNAMI, said that sex trafficking is a means to end for the commercial sex industry. It is clear from this statement that the intention behind all the sex trafficking legislation is really a de facto means to remove all agency from participants, the agency of the participants in the sex industry. And this is clearly a human rights violation. Anti-trafficking groups use the term abolish, meaning to disappear the sex industry. They justify the use of criminalizing our occupation as an approach, but it really harms our community. Our group opposes anti-trafficking legislation because it relies on the continued criminalization of our labor under the guise of rescuing trafficked victims, and it turns all of our intimate, domestic, and commercial relationships into sex traffickers and pimps, and we find this completely inappropriate. Anti-trafficking legislation is always sold to the public as rescuing children. Last week, law enforcement announced that they had carried out these types of rescuing efforts. What they didn't say in their press releases is that they actually had conducted anti-prostitution sting operations to do so. These prostitution sting operations result in the arrest of both adults and the underage alike. It is unclear who was arrested for prostitution under the guise of rescuing children, who went to jail, who has become a defendant in a case that's being adjudicated in criminal courts. We oppose such poor public reporting by law enforcement agencies, but they have been able to get away with it because of the poor, overbroad definitions that conflate prostitution as victims, minors as children, children as prostitutes, and our relationships as pimps and traffickers. It should be unacceptable to this committee that such reporting is allowed to whip up public and political posturing towards a problem that could be easily solved by decriminalization of prostitution. Our group has filed a federal lawsuit against the state of California to invalidate the prostitution law to stop this costly, failed approach, and to force our state to instead treat our community with equal protection under the law. The criminalization of prostitution is big money in our state. It allows law enforcement and state agencies as well as nonprofits to apply for and receive tax dollars under the guise of rescuing children. This is clearly failed policy. I have provided for you declarations from anonymous adult white female sex worker who had been entrapped by a naked FBI agent who posed as a customer in a prostitution sting operation under the guise of rescuing children, while in another instance she performed oral sex on a local California county sheriff. She was arrested in both cases for prostitution. Her story provides some insight to how these law enforcement agencies and their right-along nonprofits rescue people violated her constitutional rights. I'm also providing with you a redacted police report of a 29-year-old black female who too was arrested for prostitution under the guise of rescuing children. As you can see from that report I've provided for you, under the modus operandi, the police have listed crimes, sex, and children but there were no children involved in her arrest. So our concern is that these police reports who are naming children in them when there are no children involved are being logged somehow as sex trafficking, and that in turn those police agencies and those nonprofits are using those inflated numbers to solicit monies to provide, for their salaries, apparently. Our main suggestion is to untangle this legislative quagmire with these definitions by creating a new definition that encompasses our whole erotic community. And that would destigmatize erotic service providers. We specifically suggest the enactment of the Obama administration's suggestion that we get some anti-discrimination legislation for our community, so that when we are victims of crime that we can go and report without the threat of being arrested or for prostitution or being investigated as sex traffickers. We also asked the committee to consider removing legal or sexual contact as a legal means to entrap people in prostitution. Because, if they're treating adults in this way, we know they're treating minors in this way, and this is completely dangerous and reckless. We also asked the committee to consider, changing these definitions to be able to enfranchise our community. We feel that's very important, that we are part of the problem, or we are part of the solution to end the problem of force, fraud, and coercion in our industry by being able to separate out those of us who are in the industry by choice as opposed to people who are forced, and that will be a new public treasure for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Now